Salvete escapely. Today we're going to be starting the fourth labor, which is the quest for the Erymanthean Boar. Um, just a little bit of background here. Hunting boar, which are enormous wild pigs, were extremely popular in ancient Greece among nobility. They considered it training for war. People would hunt pigs by using large numbers, by using dogs, and by using the best weapons they had available. Boar hide is unusually thick, and boars are extremely aggressive. So you'd usually fight with a special kind of spear, which you guys can see up there. Boar spears have that crossguard on them because if you stab a boar, it will often keep charging. It'll continue to impale itself further, giving up its own life just to get back at you. So hunting boar is serious business. In the time of Hercules, people had helmets that were made out of boar tusks. If you killed enough of them, you could get sort of a dome made out of them and wrap them up in leather and make a helmet out of it. And that was a sign both of your hunting prowess and a decent kind of defense back in the Bronze Age. Hercules usually is tasked with retrieving the Erymanthean boar alive. And really interesting with this labor is that the boar itself is not nearly the most important part of the story. In a lot of versions, Hercules can capture the boar and start heading back before the interesting thing even happens. The interesting thing in this case is that he's meeting up with a friend of his named Pholus, the centaur. Pholus knows Hercules. Presumably, they met back when Hercules was a child being trained by the centaur Chiron. He lives near Erymanthus, and unlike most centaurs, he seems to be civilized. The mark of civilization is that he is a good host to Hercules. He engages in xenia, hospitality. The detail that they give with this is that even though Pholus lives in a cave and being, a monster centaur, eats his meat raw, he cooks food for Hercules and, chats with him, talks in a civilized way. Hercules asks for wine. This is generally part of the code of Xenia, that you're supposed to give food, you're supposed to give wine, chance to clean up, a place by the fire, comfortable place to sit. Just to show you how seriously they took this, if you were hosting a stranger, you were supposed to give all of those things before you asked who your guest was. Modern readers often point out that Hercules might be pushing it a little bit by asking for the wine, but generally in ancient Greece it was considered within his rights to ask for this. The only wine Pholus has is really, really good and really, really old, and was given to him for the rest of the centaurs and he to drink by Bacchus or Dionysus, 3 generations ago. Some of you guys would be looking at that if any of you know anything about wine. Wine goes bad a lot faster than that. But in the ancient world, good wine was old and it was sweet, and that's how people thought of it. So this old wine presumably would have been very good. Hercules opens the wine. Pholus pours him a glass, and the smell of this is fantastic, and it drifts really far. This is apparently a very pungent wine. It drifts so far that the other centaurs realize Pholus has opened the wine, and they come over expecting to party. And a lot of them are actually really upset when they see Hercules there, a human, drinking the wine for the centaurs. The version of the story I like best with this has one of the centaurs confronting Pholus about this and saying, "What are you doing sharing this with an outsider?" Hercules stands up and says, "Listen, Pholus is being a good host. I asked for wine, he gave me some." And that centaur puts his hand on Hercules' chest, pushes him back, and said, "This doesn't concern you." Right about now, you should be remembering Hercules' tragic flaw, his anger. So Hercules pushes him back. The thing is, when a centaur pushes you, you probably get knocked down. When Hercules pushes you, you go outside. This starts a huge fight. As we can see in our next great picture here, great neoclassical painting of Hercules fighting a bunch of centaurs over the wine jug, as you can see right in the middle there. Hercules does not lose fights, and he fights really hard. He takes his arrows out, he takes some of the poisoned arrows, and he starts scaring centaurs away with them, generally hitting one of them in a spot where they would fall down, scares the rest of them away. Hercules likes fighting, he's good at it, and he keeps doing this, and he pursues the centaurs for a while. Now, there's a couple of versions of this. I'm going to go with a simple, straightforward one that doesn't loop too much stuff back in. As Hercules has driven a bunch of the centaurs away, Pholus peeks out of the cave and sees one of the centaurs who's gotten a very, very small cut on one leg, dead. And Pholus comes up, and he looks around and can't see what's going on. Kind of like Chiron, Pholus knows a little bit about medicine and doesn't know what could have possibly done this. And he sees Hercules' arrow, and he picks it up. And by chance, by accident, He either drops it or is testing the edge of the arrowhead with his finger and gets a little bit of that Hydra blood in him and dies on the spot. Hercules comes back, battles won, his enemies have been routed, defeated, and realizes that he's killed an old friend of his that he'd been trying to defend in his anger, in his carelessness. Maybe it's not his fault. Hercules definitely blames himself for this, and he buries Pholus mourning and then takes the boar the rest of the way back to Eurystheus. What I like about this labor, and specifically this interpretation of it, is it makes it really, really clear what the labors are about, even to Hercules, not just to the audience. You might remember that the labors are designed to be a redemption quest. Hercules has to redeem himself for killing his family in a fit of anger. Hercules is learning that not only did anger get him into this, but anger is going to keep causing him problems as long as he lets it be the master. There are other versions of the story where it's a bit more ambiguous. One of the versions of the story has actually Chiron being the one being killed, but that's a long, complicated digression to it. And I also don't really like that one because Chiron is around a couple of generations later teaching Achilles and a few other heroes. So for me, that one doesn't really fit. But we see with this, again, the big idea. Again, Hercules versus nature. Hercules going with civilization, but also that his tragic flaw is preventing him from being properly civilized. That's it for this video. We'll see you next time in the fifth labor, which I promise will be more amusing and fun because this one got really dark right out of nowhere. Take care.